Coming up on Arirang News, South Korea again reports more than 1,000 local cases of COVID-19, which could prompt the authorities in the next few days to impose the highest tier of distancing, level 3. South Korean stocks closed out 2020 at a new all-time high. Year to date, the Kospi is up more than 30%. And South Korean consumers spent less money last month compared to the month before as the virus kept people at home. Business sentiment is down again, too. It's 5 p.m. here in Seoul. Thanks for tuning in to Arirang News. I'm Devin Whiting. The South Korean authorities are having to consider raising the country's distancing measures to the highest level, with the number of COVID-19 cases again above 1,000. The current level of distancing is due to be in effect until January 3rd, but they say new measures could be needed before then. Kim Jae-hee has this report.
With no clear signs of downtrend in the number of new COVID-19 patients amid the third wave of the pandemic, the South Korean government is mulling over whether to raise social distancing measures to level 3, the highest level in its 5-tier system. The country reported 1,050 new virus cases on Wednesday, exceeding the 1,000 mark for the second day in a row. Of Wednesday's new cases, 1,025 were locally transmitted and 25 were from overseas. There have been 20 more deaths, bringing the death toll to 879. Of Wednesday's new cases, 705 were from the Greater Seoul area. Those include cases from a mass outbreak at Dongbu Detention Center in Seoul, where at least 792 people have been infected so far and 1 person has died. Health authorities on Wednesday decided to conduct a 4th round of testing at the detention center. The Prime Minister on Wednesday showed his concern over the scale of the third wave of cases.
The percentage of confirmed cases is relatively low compared to the total population of the country. However, around 40% of the total confirmed cases have occurred in the past month, making the current third wave of the virus our biggest challenge so far.
He also mentioned the 800 billion Korean won, or around $734 million of disaster relief funds allocated for hospitals and medical personnel, and urged authorities to carry out the support measures as soon as possible. Meanwhile, the Central Disaster Management Headquarters on Wednesday thanked the public for social distancing and encouraged people to refrain from meeting during the year-end holiday season.
The movement in the Greater Seoul area over the weekend has been on the decline for 3 weeks. I am confident that this crisis will be our last if the current efforts to social distance is maintained.
He also stressed the government will continue to provide full support to the public to overcome this health crisis. Kim Jae-hee, Arirang News.
South Korea has decided to allow the U.S. military to start vaccinating South Korean soldiers and civilians working with the U.S. Army. In a statement Wednesday, Seoul's defense ministry said South Koreans can get the shot if they choose to, but they must be told about the possible side effects and how they're going to be treated if they have an adverse reaction. U.S. Forces Korea should also give the defense ministry a list of the Koreans who got the shots so their condition can be monitored. The vaccinations, the ministry said, will be carried out according to the U.S. military's own plan. In other news, North Korea's ruling Workers' Party will be holding a rare Congress likely in the first week of the new year to approve a new 5-year plan. The regime has admitted that its economic plans in recent years have fallen short. The party Congress could also be used to send a message to the incoming leadership in the U.S. Kim Dami has the details.
Chairing a Politburo meeting of the ruling Workers' Party on Tuesday, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un decided to hold the party's Congress in early January. The North State-run media reported Wednesday that the meeting was focused on confirming the agenda for the regime's 8th Congress. No specific dates were announced, but watchers expect it to take place sometime between January 4th and the 7th, considering a large number of Congress attendees will pay tribute at the Kumsusan Palace at the start of the new year. On top of that, January 8th is Kim Jong-un's birthday. The event will be the first of its kind in 4 years. It's expected to cover a range of matters, including a 5-year economic development plan and new policy lines toward Seoul and Washington amid frozen denuclearization talks. There may possibly be a message for the incoming Biden administration. Tuesday's meeting also reviewed the achievements and progress made during the regime's so-called 80-day campaign. In October, Kim launched a 2-month-long project to achieve national and economic goals ahead of the January Congress. The regime state media said innovative achievements in all fields have laid a great foundation for the upcoming event. 김다미, Arirang News.
South Korea's main stock index, the Kospi, closed at a new all-time high on the last trading day of the year. The Kospi rose almost 1.9% to close at 2873.5. This was the fourth record close in a row. The Kosdaq was also up by 1.15%. Year to date, the Kospi is up 30.75%, and the Kosdaq is up even more, almost 45%. The resurgence of COVID-19 in South Korea caused consumer spending to decline again last month. Business sentiment fell too for the first time in 3 months. Bae-Yeon-ji reports.
As COVID-19 resurged in South Korea in November, consumption fell for the second month in a row. According to Statistics Korea on Wednesday, retail sales fell 0.9% compared to the previous month. The country had also seen a decline in consumption in October. The statistics agency said the fall was mainly due to lower demand for winter clothes amid a spell of relatively warm weather, and as many people refrained from going outside due to social distancing measures. The overall industrial output edged up slightly by 0.7% in November, compared to the same period last month. But this does not mean the economy has recovered completely, as compared to the same period last year, it was still down by 0.6%. The rise was due to an increase in manufacturing of semiconductors and electronic components. Facility investment also rose by 3.6%, a huge rebound from a 3.2% fall in the previous month. The resurgence of COVID-19 also worsened business sentiment in the country. Data from the Bank of Korea showed on Wednesday that the business sentiment index in December stood at 75, falling for the first time in 3 months. A figure below 100 indicates pessimists outnumber optimists. Bae-Yeon-ji, Arirang News.
Time now for an in-depth look at the market news this afternoon. And for that, I'm joined on the line by Dr. Yang Jun-seok, professor of economics at the Catholic University of Korea. Professor Yang, thank you for making time today.
Happy to be here.
Well, all three main indices on Wall Street were slightly lower overnight. The day before, they reached new all-time highs. And in Korea, today is the last trading day of the year, and the Kospi is at a new high. What's the story on Wall Street and in the domestic stocks?
Okay, well, it's a story that we've seen in several countries. When the stock market hit an historical high, the next day they seem to shrink a little bit. For the United States, the record high was due to optimism over getting the stimulus bill, but the negative effect on Tuesday seems to be affected because of not just because of nervousness over achieving the record highs, but also conflict between President Trump and his fellow Republicans about whether the government should pay more to households. President Trump wants $200, while Republicans have agreed to $600. And then rising coronavirus infections and death rates in the United States, slower than expected vaccinations, are contributing to pessimism. But still, overall, there's still 1 day remaining in U.S. stock trading. But so far this year, S&P 500 has risen 15.4%, Dow has risen 6.3%, NASDAQ by 43.2%. So U.S. has had a very good year. European markets were mixed after a steep rise last week and Monday, but the result was mixed on Tuesday. FTSE United Kingdom, it had a very strong growth of 1.6%. They're heading out the year with a trade deal with the EU, but CAC rose 0.4%, but DAX fell 0.2% after hitting a record high on Monday. Asian markets, Hang Seng in Hong Kong rose 2.1%. Shanghai rose 1.5%. They are not finished trading yet, but Shanghai is now fairly close to the highs that we've seen in 2018. Nikkei went down 0.5%. This seems to be a reaction to reaching a 30-year high yesterday. Kospi, as you heard in the last story, we had an historical high today, fourth day in a row. Since late November, whenever this Kospi goes up, it usually hits a record high, and today was no exception. It rose 1.9% today. Kospi's year-to-date returns have been 30.75%. Kosdaq rose 3.2% today. Yesterday and 1.2% today, and their year-to-date has been 44.58%. So the Korean stock market is actually doing much better than even the United States.
It's pretty incredible. Now, Professor, we see Korean businesses had been looking forward to an improvement, but because of the third wave of the virus, sentiment was down again this month, and it's not looking great for January either. What do you make of the situation?
Okay, well, the situation is not good. We're having infections of over or very near 1,000 people per day throughout December, and the recent numbers come in large part due to infection in the Eastern Seoul Detention Center, and this is especially disappointing elderly care centers. The reason that this is especially disappointing is that we've known that elderly care centers are very vulnerable. We've seen the coronavirus hit these elderly care centers in the United States and Europe, but we seem to be caught by surprise that the elderly care centers in Korea are now getting hit. We're running short on doctors as well as bed capacity to take care of these increased infections. So there has been a lot of disappointment with the government as well. And then because of the strengthened distancing measures, year-end is not feeling very festive. Micro businesses are facing closures and drastically reduced number of customers. Hospitals are running out of room. So the situation seems to be worsening rather than improving. And the vaccine is still pretty far away in the future. The government expects the first shots to be administered in February, but realistically, for most people, it'll be third or even fourth quarter when they can get the shots. And since it'll take somewhere between 9 to 12 months for the from the beginning of the shots to recover from not only the coronavirus but the economic recession, that means most of 2021 is likely to be spent in slowdown if you're lucky, recession if you're not.
And before we go, Professor, we've only got about half a minute left. Could you comment on the exchange rate? The Korean won's now down about 1,080 to the dollar.
Okay, well, this is a case where there's a good news and a bad news at the same time. When the global economy becomes more stable, Korean won tends to strengthen. And Korean won is now correlated somewhat with the Chinese yuan, and Chinese yuan has been strengthening for most of the year. And then Korean won is largely affected by foreign investment into Korean stock markets, and foreigners have been on the net investing a lot in the Korean stock market since November. So all these forces are strengthening the Korean won. It's likely to continue for the near future. Some people are worried that the exports will fall because of it. I'm not as worried because since 2008, the trade volume, global trade volume seems to be more important than exchange rate in determining Korea's exports. So if the global trade volume recovers next year, so will the Korean exports. I don't think the exchange rate will be that important a component.
All right. Thanks so much for sharing your insights with us today, Professor. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Around the world, the pandemic's taken away people's livelihoods and devastated local economies, but stocks are soaring, and as our Ji-young reports, so are home prices.
Chris Shriv, a prospective home buyer in the U.S., was told by his real estate agent that 25 offers were made within a day for some of the properties he had his eye on.
I don't know that it's even worth us going and looking at it because there's no way that the list price is going to be the end sale price.
Over the course of 2020, COVID-19 has brought the world economy to its knees, but the real estate market has been booming in most middle and high-income countries. Since July, new home sales in the U.S. have ranged between 38% and 48% higher on year. Analysts say cheap mortgages have sparked soaring demand for property. It's not only the desire for more space, but demand has been fueled by more people working from home, often outside big cities.
The telecommute option is opening up areas that people would have no longer, or not no longer, but they wouldn't have thought about going, 30 miles away because that's going to be an hour into their work.
House prices in other major economies have spiked compared to the same period last year, with New Zealand posting a 15.4% jump in the third quarter. South Korea's house prices in December recorded their highest on-year increase in 14 years, up roughly 8%. In Seoul alone, apartment prices in December soared by around 13% on-year. Along with home purchases, nationwide rent prices also jumped more than 6.5% on-year, the biggest increase in 9 years. As part of efforts to deal with the national outcry over the soaring cost of rent, South Korea is buying vacant hotels and offices and renovating them into studio apartments that can be rented out. Also, the South Korean government plans to supply 114,000 rental homes across the nation over the next 2 years in a bid to bring down the cost of leasing a home. 엄지영, Arirang News.
And that does it for this newscast. Thank you for watching.